Hello, and welcome back to the Explicit Measures podcast with Tommy, Seth, and Mike. Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to the podcast with the measures and the things.
The
I don't know what I'm
measures and
saying.
the explicit thing. No, we try to stay away from the explicit things. But,
No explicits. Just lots of measures.
It's important.
Welcome back, everyone.
Actually, the order of those words is actually important.
Absolutely important. Good morning. Just jumping into things today. We are having lots of we'll do a couple quick intros that we have found across the internet this week. A couple other items that have occurred across the Microsoft blog, things that are coming out. So Power Platform pipelines just went GA. Did you guys see this one? I don't really use these particularly. What are these? And this might be a Tommy thing. Tommy, is this something that you use over in Power Apps?
Yeah, so the Power Platform pipelines is, and by the way, guys, I've had no internet for believe what is now 12 hours. So I've been hotspotting from my phone for the last 12 hours. So I think it's the end of the road with that. So if you can't see me, that's why. But no, so the Power Platform pipelines is basically it should have come with Power Apps first, but basically there's environments in Power Apps, and usually you want to move things from your dev to your production environment. Before, you had to create a solution and then export that file and then import that zip file, which was insane. So now it's basically the same idea as Power BI pipelines, but actually with all the content and objects from the Dataverse.
That seems very useful in a tool that basically is a freeform dev application tool.
Right?
Yeah.
It's like, hey, we're gonna build apps, but you're gonna have to upload zip files. Like,
wow.
Yeah. It seems like it's very timely.
A fantastic experience for you then, Tommy.
It also says there in the article, it sounds like they're looking to do, scheduled deployments are also coming down the pipeline, as well as pipelines extensibility are also coming soon. So I think this is a great move. I think pretty much since Power Apps came out, I think people have been kind of clamoring for this idea of being able to build reusable components, build a pipeline, have a regular deployment cycle, connect things a bit more to a IT space, but yet still give you the nice user interface that is business user facing. So that's a good one. I don't really technically build a ton of Power Apps. We do a little bit here and there, but this will be definitely very helpful. I'll dig into that one a bit to understand it. There's so much to learn between like Power Apps, Power Automate, and Power BI. To be an expert in all those things, that's a lot of time invested in like learning and figuring all those things out. There's another article that came out that I thought was very relevant here. The Chris Webb, who is, I guess, now at Microsoft, but he was on his own for a number of years and has a great website. There is an item around text searching performance inside Power BI. Tommy, did you take a look at this article? This is pretty impressive. I mean, everything Chris does is amazing.
He always amazes me. So basically, there's a few things you can do in PowerShell that are definitely not right off the bat, but one of them is with querying a lot of data. If you're trying to like query web contents and you're trying to do this over a lot of iterations, you're going to run into a lot of problems unless you just put in a few variables that are not hidden, but you just never think, oh, this would make such a difference. And really what Chris is talking about is just how to really improve anytime you're doing filtering in Power Query Search.
And so he's talking about the idea of kind of like almost to the point of tuning the search function. So there's two functions that you can either use search or contains string that evaluates text expressions you can go find or search through text words or find things there as well. So very interesting to see. Again, it goes in very deep in the technical side of things, how to performance tune it, how to make sure that's fast, some considerations. There's actually some talk about here around what is the timeout limit as it takes to query these things or how long it would take to query different columns of information. Anyways, very interesting article. That's also, I'll put that in the chat window here as well. Just for those who want to read about this.
Yeah, that's an interesting one because it's not necessarily a how-to. To me, it's more of a how it works kind of thing. Where
Yes.
what's happening in the engine is it's trying to, when you're doing text-based functions, that it tries, like the query tries to index
Yes.
the text to perform better. And if it can't do that within a certain period of time, which is like 25 seconds, then you're in this bucket of like, well, it takes as long as it takes, kind of thing.
Yeah,
But it goes
exactly.
into a lot of the nuance of like how that all works. It's really interesting. I'll have to reread it a couple times to get it all down.
I feel like there's a couple people on the internet that I read multiple times. Chris Webb is one of them, and I refer to his articles over and over again, just making sure I understand, like, what were they going through? How did it work? All those kind of details. Excellent. Well, moving on today, let's go into our main topic for today. So our main topic today is kind of really around paginated report use cases. So where do we want to use, or where do we see people needing to leverage the use case around paginated reports? Tom, you want to give us kind of an initial overview here, or initial look at where you want to maybe take some of the conversation
I would
today?
love to.
All right.
Would love to. So, this was actually your idea. So, but I will take it away. Basically, we've talked about this before multiple times, actually, about paginated reports. About you should really look into using the Power BI or the report builder. And since that conversation that we had, Microsoft's been making some excuse me, some major updates to how you can actually access data in the service. Before, if you wanted to create anything that resembled a paginated report, you needed the report builder. You needed to understand how parameters work.
Correct.
But now you can actually go to the data hub and actually just really just choose a few columns from a table or from a data set, and pretty much you're halfway there to what a paginated report is. And it looks like they're continuing to update that with more and more features. But yeah, it's really because of those updates. It kind of brings to our attention again, what is the role of paginated reports?
Yeah, I think this is a really neat feature here, and I'm gonna hesitate here just a slight moment. There was a comment we had a couple podcasts ago where we were talking about where's the lowest hanging fruit for Microsoft, right? I mean, when you step back and think about where does Microsoft have the advantage in this report building or BI space? It's really the analysis services model. That's their bread and butter. This incredible tool that can go grab a bunch of tables, stitch them all together, and I would even encourage, well, maybe not Tommy because your internet's kind of slow, but Seth, if you go to the paginated report piece right now, you have to go check it out. I mean, we were in the data. So a couple ways you can access the ability to make a paginated report. The first ability was kind of downloading a separate desktop application it was a report builder. Correct me if I'm wrong on that one. And you can download it from the Microsoft Store, or you can go get it directly from the Microsoft app website. Once you have that, you can then build these RDL files. And Seth, I think you've done a lot of kind of migration pieces from SSRS RDL, what you would traditionally do for a SSRS report, into now paginated reports. How was the migration for you?
Pretty seamless, actually. So I didn't do it right when paginated was added into Power BI, and I know that there might have been some difficulty there, but it is probably one of the simplest things to do right now. Yeah. So if people are still concerned about that kind of piece, which sometimes between services as they enhance products, like there's a migration where you have to kind of rebuild things, or it's not as seamless as the tooling and what people say, how easy it is. This is hands down super easy, right? Like you basically open up Report Builder, connect to an old RDL file, it's converted, like fix your links and deploy it into Power BI, and it's literally that easy. Which, yeah, I mean, even before Report Builder, old reporting services. So you're in Visual Studio, you're deploying things through Visual Studio to a SharePoint site or a reporting services server, or, all the on-premises, hijinks that we had to deal with. Like, there's a lot of configuration to just get it out the door. And I think what's interesting to me is we take for granted, I think, just some of the very technical steps that you had to do in the past to configure something and get it into a location for end users.
Yes.
And then when it was even there, ensuring they had the correct access to these systems, et cetera, et cetera. And Power BI, just now it's publish, publish,
it makes it so
share,
easy. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So yeah, the experience,
huge advantage,
bar none, right? Like it's a great experience now where I think what pushes, not pushes, but it is a challenge for some people that don't know the history of reporting services or how it was built and all the different things you can do with it. It's a little intimidating because it's not as drag and drop friendly as Power BI, right? It's not
That's
as
true.
intuitive. It's not as, just straight up there. You're working within the confines of, okay, I have to click here. I'm creating this thing. It's all properties pane driven.
Yes.
What are all the different options I can do within these cells and rows? And it's just a different experience that they've done, I think, a very good job morphing into a new method of kind of upgrading it to the new age here. But at least it's not it's supporting how many years of information and reporting and data that's already been surfaced up through these reports, and just giving it a new platform to shine in Power BI.
Yeah.
Right. So that's the benefit, as opposed to, do I think a lot of people are going to be investing a lot of time into it? Well, it depends on how fast they upgrade tables and things.
Yeah, true.
Still by far,
yeah,
the best way to create a table that you want to look in a certain way, with a lot of bells and whistles that we just don't have in the Power BI table visual.
So I know there's this whole concept of like getting in. So since we've talked about a couple of different ways in which we can actually talk or reach into or modify these paginated reports, I think it would make sense right now to maybe kind of step back and say, where do we see the best use cases for paginated reports today? Is there a particular place where you guys are finding value from them? I have like 2 use cases, but I'll kind of kick it over the wall here. Let's go. Tommy, what do you think? Any kind of major use cases you can think of that you would point out?
I guess I'm going to bring up all the ones that you've brought up, and you've always gone to about data dumps, and people need the data.
Yep.
And that's probably the most straightforward case where a user doesn't have to worry about the interaction of a table and a Power BI report. They get the table, they can get it exported into whatever format they want. Boom, done. They're ready to go. So rather than trying to export from a table visual, I'll stop there because that's really I think the number one use case, because I don't want to get too far ahead of a few of the other known use cases. But yeah, obviously that's the number one kind of really purpose.
I think I really echo that sentiment. I think it's a lot of around asking that question: do you need access to data, or do you need insights on data? Do you need me to build you a visual, or do you need me to kind of craft part of the story, or do you just don't have access to the information? That's a great use case for building your own paginated report in the report builder tool. Seth, any other use cases that you're using or you're finding value from? Have you been exploring putting paginated reports inside a Power BI report? Like
not extensively yet, right? We have, but it's on the backlog to go revisit whether or not I want to start transitioning tables, normal Power BI tables into paginated, but not quite yet.
So I just went into PowerBI.com and I just popped up paginated reports, and making a table, right? So there's a couple ways you can make this one. One is an all online web version of making a paginated report. So you can go to the data hub, you can pick a data set. Basically, the data hub is a collection of all your data sets. And then when you pick on one of the data sets, you can see all the tables that live in there, measures, columns, whatever. And then you can pluck or pick those columns and or measures into making a table that you could present on the page. One of our major gripes that we had with this tool was, well, I can't filter anything. There's no ability to filter stuff. So it's been one of the downsides. However, you guys have to confirm this. Today, I went into the Paginated Reports inside the service. There's a whole new filter pane that just showed up. So I'm looking at the documentation you sent out, Tommy, the one that the articles around the Paginated Reports themselves. And there is now another, panel on the right-hand side that it has its build, filters, and fields. And for those of you who are avid builders inside Power BI Desktop, the fields pane has now changed to the data pane inside Power BI Desktop. So that throws me off. But so it has the old fields pane, but it has a new filter pane where you can apply or grab different columns. So I don't really know when that showed up. I'm looking to find if there's anything on the blog about it, but I'm seeing it right now in the application. So is this out? Can you filter now a paginated report? I think I'd be curious.
So,
Anyone who's go ahead, Tommy.
I think you can only filter in the editor, not actually. They're not parameters. So I saw that documentation too.
Oh.
And I think if you look at the doc, it came out yesterday.
Yeah.
Which is so I got really excited about that because I thought that was a huge missing feature that really makes the paginated in the service not necessarily applicable. But I was like, oh, finally filters, but it's really just setting filters and it's still pretty raw. Like, for example, with dates, it treats everything basically as text. So you'd only filter something beforehand the user can't do themselves.
So you're still, it's a build feature that before you couldn't even build with a filter, right? You could just drop data on a table. That was it.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, it was just everything.
Sorry.
How much of these new features are dev? Like I own the data set, I own the report, and I can now utilize these new features to like export some data for myself versus an end user, right? Are these like it's generated off the data set, right?
Yeah.
So as long as somebody has access to the data set, they can create an exportable paginated report off of that.
Yes.
Right.
I mean, I think that's the intent here. Like, the idea may be, I'd have to do a little bit more research on this because if you have access to the data set, and again, this is where I would think you'd plan a little bit more around what is your plan on how you're going to distribute your content. I think this brings the use case for where I have a single workspace of only data sets, and I have another workspace of only reports. I don't know sure how this would work across those tools because in some cases, I would need access to, I need to see the data set, but when I click on the data hub, does the data hub reveal to me data sets that I can have build permissions on? So does that answer your question? I don't need access to the workspace to be able to connect to the data set. That's what I'm trying to say. So if I have access to the data set, that's what the data hub is for. I have all these data sets across my organization. I'm not in the workspace. I can't edit the data set or go see them inside the workspace. What I can do is I can go to a new workspace or a workspace that I own, I can go to the data hub and see all the data sets I have access to. And then from there, I can go start look at this table. Then I can build my own table of information coming off of that data set. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Is that what your question was, or did I just take this totally the wrong way?
No, I'm fine. I get it.
Okay. I could have been totally off there. I'm like, you may have asked something. I could have answered a totally different question. It's been one of those mornings. So I think we're really close. I mean, so I'm playing here with it. I'm building a paginated report, and then I can subscribe to a report with pre-built filters into the report. So I can basically filter down to, as an editor or an author of the report, I can make the report do exactly what I want. So I could filter to a country, a region, or whatever, build the columns that I need, and then I could subscribe to it and or export it directly from there. So you're right, Tommy. It doesn't require you to enter in parameters yet, but I have to imagine the filtering is like the first step in like, okay, now we're going to give you parameters, and how's that going to work?
That's what they have to be moving towards, right? Where obviously the big sell point of Paginated Reports is the consumer can quickly pick and choose what data they need.
Yes.
So it really, honestly, the filtering from the report editor point of
Mhm.
view doesn't really help anyone, and doesn't really solve anything, because there's how many times you're going to need to edit or refilter a report unless someone had edit abilities. So it's
I think
moving in the right direction, but I don't see any use case for it.
I would say there's a short-term use case, right? I mean, what this will do, if you can't add parameters inside the paginated report as you're rendering the report, or when you're subscribing, hey, subscribe. I think maybe the challenge here is, now that you have the ability to filter the report, you could then in the near term add the parameters to that when you subscribe, or when when you render the report. Hey, enter these, pick these things, right? Pick something from here, and then I'll render the report for you, or like you would see in the paginated report building program or the report builder desktop application. But I think what this will do in the short term is it'll provide people at least the ability to make lots of paginated reports filtered for very specific things, right? So if you're looking for a very specific piece of data or chunks of data, I think even if it's not perfect yet, I think it's giving you a lot more capability than you have ever had before. And again, my opinion here is I don't really want to use another desktop application. To me, this seems like this should be a fully featured, all online tool that we should be able to just go use. I don't really know why we would want to have additional tooling to do this. It seems simple enough. Anyway, that's my opinion. I could be totally wrong on this one.
No, I would agree with you. Like I said, I don't know how much is actually right now solved with it in the surface. It's honestly, it is really cool for the ability to select a few columns from a data set and just see what's going on there. And I believe, do you need edit abilities on that data set to do so?
Good question. I don't know if you need read, or I'll have to check this one, because again, with the filtering option here, this is something new. I think, I mean, literally, Tony, you pointed out the article yesterday. It was literally, the article was updated yesterday, just recently. Add filters to when creating. So they just announced, or they didn't announce anything actually. They just put out the article recently. It's very new about adding filters to stuff. So I have to imagine this was. I'll go see if I can check on the feedback or when this page was developed inside GitHub. See if you can see when the file was actually created.
Yeah, because I think if even if you just move people towards like, hey, you can go to the data hub and quickly view a few columns, and now you can also filter. That's one thing, I guess, but I don't see that really as an adoption or a use case.
Trying to see the history on this file. Yeah, it was made. It looks like it was made 5 days ago or so, as far as I can tell. So, yeah, recent development. Oh, anyways, sorry, I'm getting off a tangent here. All right, moving along.
I do like but here's the difference, right? So in quick playing through this, obviously I'm much more familiar with like the desktop platform, deploy that report into the service. These are specific reports I'm creating. This simplifies an experience for me where if I do have access to a data set and I can create these reports, that I can now utilize that data set for other types of analysis or one-off paginated reports that I can save off and create then, right? What's interesting is I can create this, add the filters, save it to my workspace or wherever, and now I have my easy button of like, okay, if maybe it's a checks and balances report, right? Maybe one off this data set, which is, large. I would assume these are larger, more curated data sets where I have Power BI reports on them. Like this would be a great way to do data validation.
Yep.
On the report pages, because that isn't, we talk about it a lot, but it isn't something that's on every report, right? So if something's not showing up, there's potential for you to go in and analyze directly off the table in these paginated to actually see the core or the detailed rows and do your own analysis. So the fact that you can save to your own workspace or to other workspaces, and there's that very simple, I think it's designed much more for the data analysis piece of Paginated, where the other use case would be where I need a pixel perfect something, right? Like that I just can't generate in Power BI.
I mean, even just thinking through that concept there, Seth. I mean, that's a great. Even if this is just a spot check, I mean, you may not have a full CI/CD pipeline. You may not have a full testing framework where, okay, I'm going to publish a report. I'm going to send out the information, right? I'm interested in making sure that the numbers, like for example, if you're reloading a data set or partitions of things, right? You need to make sure in those larger data sets you're not losing months of data, or there's not missing information and partition schema, all that kind of stuff. There's a lot more complication as the model size grows in size. So having a year by sum of, profit or sales or whatever the column is that you're trying to do, you can at least have a process that says, okay, here's a screenshot of when I published it last time. If I publish it again, last year's numbers shouldn't change. They should be the same numbers, right? So at least you have a spot check to say, that could be part of your deployment process. Okay, we're going to deploy this report. Next thing, go over, check out this paginated report, hit refresh, make sure that the numbers match these numbers for these previous periods of time. Okay, great. Now we've got at least a comfort feeling that nothing changed between what we added and what we built new. Great, now it works. I think that could be a great, quick, spot checker around some of that information. Other areas, you guys. Oh, go ahead.
I'm live testing something here.
Oh,
can you? Yeah. Okay. Edit in report. So what's interesting about this is like you could almost do ad hoc analysis, start doing your have people who may be subject matter experts in the particular area of the report.
Yes.
Generate these checks and balances reports, and then actually you could loop this back into the overall report by using.
You could put that paginated. You can embed the paginated report back into.
Right.
Yeah. You could make a separate page that's hidden and put the paginated report there and call it checks. And
because
then the paginated report
you can export these service side created objects back into the report builder.
Yes.
That's pretty nifty. That's well thought out. I like the cycle, and it is just opening up more options that then can get recycled into the work stream. That's cool.
Dude, we're catching some weird stuff on the day that we're going out here to. There's some. I'm looking at this stuff.
And this stuff.
I'm seeing things in the service here that I've not seen before, recently, and it's I don't know. Something just happened in my. Okay, so I'm trying to test this in live. So what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to live test what we were talking about. We were talking about, hey, let's go ahead and drop in a paginated report into a report that we have inside the service. I was trying to do that. And when I went into the reports, I was prompted with a whole bunch of other in visual editing recently. Okay. It just added that in there on my report page. Is there something coming out here recently that I didn't catch
in the service?
Yeah.
What?
I was weird.
All right. Now we're diverting.
Sorry, we're getting. All I'm trying to do is add a paginated report into a report, and I just built a report using a data set in the service. Was going to add the paginated report there, and a little window prompt up and said, "Hey, by the way, you can on visual edit stuff." I was like, "What the heck?"
Oh, really? That's kind of
hold please. Mike has diverted the entire our entire show.
I literally was just trying to create a data set on top of things. It's doing crazy stuff here. It's picking out a whole bunch of data and it's auto building me a report, and then now I'm getting to see this new personalized visual thing. I don't know. Okay, I don't know what it's doing. Something is changing the service. Apparently, they're prepping for the next month's release or something like that. So there are all kinds of new prompts that I'm seeing is building
deploying the bits to the service. Is what you're saying?
It's happening. I'm seeing really weird personalized as visual now options inside the auto-generated report paging. So you can add data fields directly into the visual right inside. It's pretty cool. Anyways, sorry, didn't mean to divert there, but I do agree with you, Seth. I think there's a great use case here for editing the report when you want to have an extra page. You want to build that extra page in there. I think that totally makes sense. Drop in the visual for the paginated reports, make it part of the report. And there's actually much higher limits when you're using paginated reports to connect to data. So you can pull out a lot more information out of there.
Exporting.
The export is much higher in volume, which I think is pretty dang sweet as well.
So really kind of going back to the report builder, I feel like report builder really is going the way of deprecation. And I don't know if that's maybe possibly a hot take, but honestly, if you really think about
face right now,
I can see yours, my friend.
Continue. Your deprecation. Okay.
All right.
Yes. Well, honestly, though, because I'm sure, like, I know that you use it. I know that you use the paginated report still, but with everything happening in the service, I mean, we can't say that the desktop version or with the parameters and everything's so archaic to what Power BI is, that is going to continue to be an enterprise option. So I guess, Seth, give me really what the enterprise solutions still are that only the report builder can do.
Well, there's a performance challenge. Well, sorry, you said report builder. You're talking about the desktop application that versus. Yeah. Okay. Sorry, I'm going a little bit too far there. So you're saying, what is the thing that the desktop application does that the service can't do yet? Correct.
Exactly.
Okay, I'll pause there.
So I'm fairly certain I don't have access. Like I can build a table in the service, right?
And that's it. You can't build if you wanted to build a combination of a chart and a table on the paginated report, you don't get any of that.
It handles one. They're calling it report builder, Tommy, but it's a table of information.
Table builder.
Extract quickly and easily, and it exports into report builder. Okay. Because it's the table and matrix.
So the table and matrix feature.
Right. So let me ask this question, Tommy. How many reports have you built in reporting services or report builder?
More than one, that's for sure. So probably
more than one, less than two.
Exactly.
That is not a basic table.
That is not a basic table. Honestly, my big focus has been, I've done a lot of the samples, but generally speaking, it was using calculated columns or calculated groups to easily filter from parameter to do a product sheet. That's really the biggest, in a sense, what's on the resume that I have. Not necessarily anything that has to do with invoicing, but really just making a user select to show a product catalog.
Okay. So, one, what's interesting to me is if Microsoft was going to deprecate, or anyone thought it was a good idea to deprecate report builder, then we would not have seen. I would think that would have been a big waste of time and money for that organization to create it as an easy as possible path forward for those, what'd you say, archaic tools to be integrated into the flashy net new, right? Like the best thing ever, which, mind you, we have multiple podcasts where we're at length griping about some of the visualizations, especially around tables and matrices.
Oh, totally. 100%.
So if that's your step forward, it's even a more interesting argument. I would suggest, like, there is a lot you can do on that canvas in reporting services or report builder. And when we say pixel perfect, we mean pixel perfect. Like, if I want something to show up exactly every single time, and the only thing I'm doing is replacing data sets, report builder does that. Power BI does not, right? So from two completely different use cases where I have needs that are, yes, table and matrix forms, like things that are kind of interchangeable between Report Builder and Power BI. I love the fact that they brought forward that table visual into Power BI, so it's part of that canvas and the ecosystem. But at the same time, like, it drives to two completely different parts of how I analyze data. One is I want to provide insightful reports that are consuming large volumes of information to categorize and then understand. And then there's the other part where Report Builder shines in that one area of like tables and matrices, where I can design that layout and that export to where I can go down to the row level because I need to do a finer grained analysis on something. That completely puts aside the fact of the Pixel Perfect report, where I need something to show up and Power BI can't do that at all, right? So like, no, you wouldn't deprecate a part of your platform that services the need of that reporting style. Just because it's not the one that we're most familiar with or developing in all the time doesn't mean that there aren't many, many, many businesses that utilize that feature and functionality, right? So Power BI is a platform as well as servicing multiple different report types and styles. And Report Builder is, I think, the backbone of how the vast majority of people still to this day digest data. And it's in that form of rows and columns in a table. So the fact that we now have, essentially taken antiquated ways in which we surface that information, and that I agree with. I'm not forced to use SharePoint. I'm not forced to use infrastructure with reporting services, but at the same time, there are still like on-premises report servers, right, that are Power BI that support reporting services. So there, like, we can't go like, there's a thought in here. The thought is not every company is in the cloud. Not every company can use the Power BI service, right? So now I'm servicing them on premises with both of those report styles as well, right? So is it the parent in this relationship, because it's been around much longer? Yeah, but if they were going to deprecate or say it wasn't a reporting style that's useful or used or deeply embedded in companies, everywhere, then they would have cut that string when Power BI launched.
I think these are all, as I'm thinking about like the differences, right? It's interesting seeing how they're building what they're calling paginated reports in the service. It's literally, to your point, a dump of information into a table. You're not making headers, you're not making footers, you're not, there's a lot of, you're not stylizing the individual cell level format of each individual cell. You can build all that inside the report builder today. I think it's a good first step. I think if Microsoft had their way about this one, again, it's limited time, limited people, all that kind of stuff, they probably would want to have all of Report Builder inside the service. But I think they're just having to start somewhere and reimagine that experience as if it was built as a web browser, right? I don't think you can get all the verbatim day one exact same features as you would in the desktop application. And my understanding is the Power BI Report Builder is like, wasn't there an older SSRS tool set that was like a different report building tool, or was it just called Report Builder?
SSRS has been around a long time. SQL Server reporting services.
But where would you build that? Where would you build the format for the RDL file? Was there a specific tool for that?
In Visual Studio.
It was all Visual Studio.
Yeah.
Okay. So maybe so then ripping that out and pulling it out of Visual Studio and giving
which
it
is why you have all these right side deep integrated property panes that are just like, if you don't, it's a different language. It's a different way of interacting with and figuring out how things work. Yes. But if you put it in perspective of it being part of a hardcore code development tool, it starts to make more sense.
Yeah, right? Totally. Yes. So being born out of, and the chat very aptly is correcting me here. So we have a lot of people who have been working with this tool a lot longer. So Donald is saying, "Yep, this is in 2004," and then Kevin's like, "Yeah, this is a Visual Studio SQL Server data tools feature that you'd use on that side of things." So
one of the other things to keep in mind here, though, too, is like the RDL file and the framework for that itself as well is referenced in developer code all the time. Like it's an understandable object, right? So Tommy, to your point, like while Power BI embeds in an iframe, right? And in the same way, though, like there's a lot of that reporting infrastructure that's deeply tied into custom dev code that it understands and can consume, that is, been around for 20 years or so, or so. So it's like to rip that out and make it something that doesn't work anymore, or is completely deprecated, you'd be wiping out tons of things that just I don't know. It is interesting to me, though, if you're saying like, hey, I'm not necessarily saying like get rid of all our old RDL stuff, but what do we need a report builder for? Because we'll just use what's in the Power BI service. Like it shocks me that you're making that point when you're so adamant against getting rid of the Power BI desktop. So you want to get rid of the paginated report builder, and you're okay with that, where it's got 20 years of history as opposed to the 6-7 whatever Power BI desktop.
Tommy, you're getting called out.
Are you on mute, Tommy? Are you still with us?
The mute button. Do you know? Oh man, it was a good rant too. First off, do you know how
you were ranting to yourself?
Yes, I was ranting to myself.
And you just thought I wasn't reacting at all. That's hilarious.
Exactly. Microsoft is not afraid to deprecate, and they're very much in the business right now of that with all the things they're coming out with. Do you really think they're going to be focusing on trying to build the 85% of what people want to do with paginated reports in the service, and continue to make updates on the paginated reports with a language that is, I don't even know what the language is in paginated reports.
RDL, XML.
The logic language.
The logic language. I'm trying to follow you
is
there.
Is it OData filtering? Like, so basically when you're doing parameters in the filtering, they have their custom functions, but it's not.
Oh, yeah. I don't even know.
Exactly. And that they're going to
script. Yeah. Thanks, Rafael.
Yeah. Did you really say VB scripts? Awesome. Mm-hmm. That's amazing. So that they're going to continue to keep up with this. Maybe they're not going to necessarily deprecate it, but it's definitely not something that they're going to fully support. And I guarantee you in the next
support
in the service, support with the latest features, in terms of having updates to be something that you're using the same RDL files that you've been using for 5 years, because what else are you doing?
What is your argument?
I disagree. I think they're going to keep as much of that. I think they're going to keep as much of the RDL format. It works. It's been a 20-year proven technology. I think what they're going to try and do is they're just going to continue evolving what we see in the service to make the service more and more. I think there's a feature gap, right? I think there's a feature gap between what you can do in the service versus what you can do in the desktop application. And they're going to continue to close that gap over time. And I think right now they're just trying to pluck off the most popular features that people would want to initially move to meet, 30, 40, 50% of the standard use cases around, I need to build a table of data. Well, here's a little tool that helps you get to that level. I would hope that all the features of the Paginated Report Builder will eventually trickle their way into the service. So it's almost a full-fledged featured, the same thing, right? You can get to the same level. You can connect to data sets. You got all the formatting options that you would need. It'd be nice if that was all there, but I think they're just trying to work their way into it to get to watch the adoption of it. If people don't adopt this thing, they're not going to spend a ton of time pushing more development in that area unless they're really trying to remove you from the downloadable desktop application.
What would the point be of creating tables in Power BI service that format into an RDL or report builder format seems pretty straightforward. The other way around, which to everybody else's point, like a lot of the scripting, a lot of the report build pages, like all of the properties, is that worth pulling up and reinventing in the Power BI service? I don't even think that's worth it. Like why would I invest all of that time to modernize like that and or languages and put it in the service?
Because there's Mac users. No one on a Mac can build an RDL. I'm just teasing. That was a bogus point. Did I catch you there, Seth?
Maybe, I guess. Maybe they are going to do it. I don't know. I still don't see what the argument was, though. Do I think they're going to fully get rid of a report builder? No, absolutely not. Or I should say, a way to create reports that is going to support legacy. Well, actually, I'm going to dig into this, Tommy. Like, are they reformatting old RDL files? Onto a new platform? I don't think that's what Report Builder does. I think all it is a new skin on and a tool in which to manage those files instead of using Visual Studio. If they're going to take it to the next level, you would need to like basically create another conversion onto things completely away from XML, VB script, et cetera, onto other platforms. And like, I don't know if that juice is worth the squeeze.
I don't know. And I really let's be honest though, really what Paginated Reports and Report Builder can do, it is pretty incredible with the right configuration. But again, I think we're getting to a point though too with software and especially everything on the web, where a lot of what only Report Builder was able to do. You can probably download an open source thing on GitHub that can meet some of your needs. And we're getting there too, where the drag and drop ability is getting easier and easier. So
now I would agree with you from the standpoint that is the large majority of report builder use cases just people generating tables of information and exporting them? Absolutely. 100% agree with that. I think that like in large, probably 80% of all usage, and that's just me spitballing, are people that are like Report Builder was the only way to access data in the past. So if that's still a method now,
that's
right,
true,
especially on curated data sets, it makes absolute sense that I can leverage the same systems. What would be interesting to me is because of the way it's doing it, how much load am I putting on my models because I'm exporting data now? But I want to say that as I'm saying that, like I want to say they made some improvements to the back end, right? Because especially in premium, right, that that's going to be much more efficient. But I gotta dig into that. But that would be like my largest concern, and probably why Power BI has its limitations that it does, is because you can't have people exporting, hundreds of thousands of rows at the same time that the engine is also like supporting aggregation and providing really fast visual response times in other Power BI reports. Or maybe they can, and they're just like, hey, buy another capacity.
I'm sure they'll let you do anything if you just pay enough money for it. I mean, that's probably
right. Like the more here, we're adding all these capabilities for you, and you can use them. But
in premium,
there's
premium
a threshold.
plus.
There's always going to be a threshold.
Power BI Premium, Power BI Premium per user plus the Power BI the Paginated Report add-in. Like there's another $5 a month, and you can get this feature too.
But at the same time, if you think about it, like Pro now uses it, or now has the capability to use Report Builder. So they had to have figured out something as it relates to, making that a really efficient means of data extraction. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to support all of this that's going on in the service as far as exporting data sets, creating these reports, exporting data, etc.
Man, I'm torn here. I'm torn on these use cases here. I'm really, you're helping me unwind a lot of. Let me step back and ask a question then to you, Seth. Like, do you feel like with a couple extra features inside the paginated report building side of things inside the service? Do you feel with a couple additional features, a larger, like, is there a couple missing features that you would look at and say, it needs these couple main features for it to be really impactful and handle a lot of that general workload? Hey, I'm just trying to build tables. I'm just trying to email data out to people. I'm just like, to me, there's a couple areas where I think the investment is worth them spending their time. Like, what would be the features that are missing that you see today that they should add so that it becomes more effective in the service? Is there a couple main ones? Like parameters, I think we've kind of talked about at length now. Like probably parameters should be there.
Even still, like what I would need to do is with everything that we're seeing today, right? I can access a data set, I can create my columns, I can now add filters. When I export that to Report Builder,
yes,
I'm assuming that's connected to the data set.
Yes.
Can I add parameters there?
On the data set, or you mean?
No, I'm now in Report Builder.
Oh yeah. I would think that would be what you'd want. Yes.
The use cases that I see that they're addressing, I think, are the right ones from the standpoint that if people need to see rows of data and access to data sets that I have in my model, and that's the other part of this, right? I'm restricted to what I have in the model. Then I think it's creating that easy button where they can just say, hey, I'm going to connect to this data. I'm going to export it. Now I'm going to edit it in Report Builder and create an actual report out of it. And if I can add in the parameters, add the bells and whistles with that data set connection, now I have that full loop, right? Back to exporting something or redeploying, I should say, into the Power BI service that I now have a report that is, producing everything I need. It sounds full circle to me, but like I said, I don't have any, like, have I done this and am implementing it live to answer your question fully? No, I haven't yet.
No. And again, I'm just kind of going after, like, I guess where my head's going is, right. I feel like they're trying to hit the majority of the use cases. How can I swing and hit the lion's share of what we need to get done here in the paginated report space? And I mean, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
No, I was going to say the only one glaring difference between reporting services and RDL files, et cetera, that I've seen, and there's still just not a good solution for, are the data driven parameters. Like, essentially, in reporting services, I could say, hey, I have a parameter or a list of salespeople, right? I have a list of salespeople. I'm going to pass each salesperson into this report parameter. I want you to generate the report for that salesperson. I want you to email it to them.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So dynamically, I could take data, run it through this report, and then auto email somebody. And there's just, like, you just can't do that today. Like, yes, somebody I think has a solution using Power Automate, but like licensing additional thing, like throw it through, like it's just not an enterprise solution. I don't, especially if you're not heavily I would say this, and it'll be interesting because I think we may have a podcast coming up talking about this, but I'll be interested in Tommy's take on if I have, in my case, where I have an enterprise data solution, I have a business intelligence team that manages a lot of the reporting throughout the organization, but we don't use Power Automate. It's not part of our stack. And if that's the only thing that I would need Power Automate for, is to go generate some reports based on this dynamic nature of the data and send them out dynamically,
why not just build it into the service?
It's not a solution for me, because I don't want a one-off I don't want a one-off thing over here that handles some of my reporting. Now, if Power Automate is a core part of my platform and everybody knows this is how we go build business processes, I can see a better use case for it. But maybe that would be the only thing
I completely agree
way missing.
I mean, another thing I'm thinking here too is, right.
I would completely agree. Okay.
What if you also have in here an area where you start looking at the reports, right? Let's again, I'm just kind of imagining here maybe some use cases, and this may be real or not real based on how people want to use paginated reports, but there's potentially a use case to go into the service, get connected to the data set, drag a couple fields in, download the RDL file, because you can download that, which basically defines a majority of the data set, a simple table, some calculations, right? You can basically get a starting point for where the RDL file would start from. Again, removing some of your main barriers, and then you can go in and just learn how to make a parameter, right? Because I think in the service, it will obey an RDL file if you have a parameter in it. You just can't generate the parameters today inside the service.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
So maybe another use case here around where you might see people starting with paginated reports inside the service would be is get started, get most, connect to the data set, connect to the table you want, grab the columns you want. Here's a table of information. Okay, now hop back over to download the RDL file, open it up in Power BI Report Builder, and then tweak it a little bit more above and beyond. Now you don't have to do the lion's share of the work, or at least the starting point, right? You can at least get it going to a point where you're like, okay, I've got a good baseline to get going. I'm playing with that now, actually, as we speak, because I'm thinking that's another. I've not thought of it that way. Is to go build the report, rough it out, and then bring it down, and then continue to stylize it or change it based on your need later on. So we should probably. I haven't pulled it up yet, but let's see if chat.gpt is going to give us an answer on. We should probably do our segment again. What should be our question for ChatGPT around? Is Seth right that paginated reports will never disappear? At least so.
What are good use cases for paginated reports?
Okay, all right. So what are?
I'm pretty sure ChatGPT of 2021 doesn't know that reporting services and Report Builder is in Power BI right now.
Well, let's see what it says here. We'll see what it has. Any kind of options here. So as ChatGPT is chatting to me, the section here about where paginated reports. I guess maybe I should specify it should be where paginated reports are for Power BI, right? But paginated reports could be any kind of tooling at that point.
Yeah, I suppose.
All right, let me change the question here. So I'll do Power BI. It's doing a lot of interesting things when it's talking to things here. For good use case.
So the question will be about those other tools.
What other tools? Like, what are you talking about? There's
yeah.
So what are good use cases for Power BI paginated reports? Oh, it's basically spit out the same answer here. Power BI reports are specifically designed to create and distribute. Oh, look, it did. Pixel perfect formatted reports that can be printed and formatted in other formats. Good use cases would include financial reports, a detailed information about complex calculations, compliance reporting. Organizations in regulated industries such as healthcare and finance and government would have to comply with strict reporting regulations. Interesting comment. Operational reporting. Managers need a range of key performance indicators, sales reporting, and for human resources. So basically, you can use it anywhere. It's like general. It's a very generalized. Like, you can use paginated reports in these areas. Maybe the question should be like, why would I want to use it?
Cool.
I don't have any. ChatGPT, you did okay today. I wasn't really. I didn't really get.
Now we know if ChatGPT is having problems with the first time with our segment that ChatGPT had a little issues kind of entering you there. Maybe because it doesn't even have Power BI report builders in its catalog.
It doesn't even know what it is. Maybe I should ask it, what's the difference between SSRS and paginated report building? Maybe that's where we should, maybe that's what we should ask it. See what it comes up with. Anyways, we're winding down on time here. ChatGPT kind of, you did, okay today. Maybe next time ChatGPT, you should update yourself a little bit more and add some more relevant items. Or probably was user error. It's probably my fault, right? This is what you do now. You blame yourself. I didn't ask the question correctly. It couldn't understand me.
Probably delayed response, right? Just because Tommy's internet is out, and just I don't know.
Yeah.
So real quick here, I rephrased the question. I said, what are the key advantages after asking the other one? And this is where I think we wanted to go to with some of this one. It says pixel perfect formatting for high volumes of data. You can handle high volumes of data, exporting them. It allows for printing. You can get to formats like PDF and Excel. Not necessarily Excel's really printing, but You can schedule them. Scheduling is a run on a time interval, which is, I think, very well. You can do data-driven subscriptions. And they talk just generally about some security options. Okay, not bad. Pretty good there. Not bad. I'll say decent job, ChatGPT. You did a good job on this one. So anyways, that's kind of our run around on Paginated Reports. I think it's a good topic. I think it is definitely something, if you haven't been using it yet, you should probably consider thinking about exploring, playing with some of the tooling. It appears as the tooling is being updated as we speak. So there's some new features coming out. Check out the Microsoft blog. I'll put the articles in the description here below. And if you liked this episode, or if you feel there was any value at all added from this one, or if you wanted to, banter about this one later on, feel free to share this one or let other people know that you found some value from the Paginated Reports Explicit Measures podcast episode. Tommy, where else can you find the podcast?
You can find the podcast anywhere it's available: Apple, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcast. Make sure to subscribe and leave a rating. And if you want to join the conversation live, you can every Tuesday and Thursday at 7:30 a.m. Central.
Thank you, all of you Paginated Report fans, all 10 of you out there in the world that are hanging out. We appreciate your time. Thank you very much for the comment section. You've been awesome, keeping us honest around what is VB script behind the scenes here that supports SSRS reporting. So thank you very much. We appreciate that. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.